people seem very uneasy these days, and I get it. I totally get it. But before I get into your specific questions, I want to set up the large picture of where we are in the United States of America today. And that is, you are entirely right to think that the Republican Party, which is currently in charge of all branches of our government, is trying to destroy our democracy. That is pretty much incontrovertible. And I can walk you through the pieces. If somebody says that they want me to do that, I write about it a lot. That is absolutely on the table. We are watching the destruction of Congress because the Republicans are simply letting Trump destroy its oversight role, its lawmaking role, and its role in appropriating money, all of which are guaranteed to it alone by the Constitution. You're watching the takeover of the Supreme Court, or had the already takeover of the Supreme Court by the radical right, which is concentrating power in the president. And you're watching President Donald Trump abrogating all that power, arrogating all that power to himself, and is saying he can rule based on emergency powers that enable him to ignore the laws and the Constitution. All of those things are true. And now all of you are probably so depressed, you're like, we're quitting now. But I said you had to remember three things. The second thing you need to remember is that this is profoundly unpopular. The American people do not want this. They do not like it. And I talk a lot about how unpopular both Donald Trump is in his job performance, which is underwater. I also talk about how exactly zero of his policies are polling positively. People do not like what they are doing. But we have another important piece of information that Elliot Morris wrote yesterday in his a publication called Strength in Numbers. And in that, he aggregated a whole bunch of polls to show that the enthusiasm gap between those who are strongly opposed to Donald Trump and those who are strongly in favor of him is about 22 points now. I believe at the beginning of his administration, it was something like there was a 3-point gap. Now it's 22 points. And what that means is that 46% of the American people are strongly opposed to what Trump is doing. And again, that's a lot. People get unhappy when you hear numbers and see that, 30% of people still believe in something that you think is ridiculous or whatever. But in a democracy, that's the way it works. You never get the diehards at either end of the spectrum, in part because they have beliefs that are out of step with the mainstream. Maybe they are not paying attention, or maybe they're just cranky and they want to be different than everybody else. That shows up in polls too. So to have 46% of Americans saying they strongly disagree with the president is a really big deal. Now, the other way you can tell that the administration knows how unpopular it is the extreme work it is putting into trying to rig the 2026 elections. If they were popular, they would not have to rig the 2026 elections. And I'll try and talk more about that in a minute. Somebody just asked, I saw go by, are other people supporting Trump? No, that's just the strength that people dislike. Then there are people who don't feel strongly enough to be on one side or the other in the strong category. But I think the next set of numbers was at another 9 or 10% disapprove of Trump, and very few approve of him. So the numbers against Trump are actually quite strong. And then there's some in the middle who aren't paying attention. Now, the third thing that you need to pay attention to is that Trump himself and the administration is very weak. Okay, so they're trying to project the idea that they're very strong, that Trump is this great, strong leader. And somebody asked a question about having seen these statements that somebody is running a reality show. And I believe what you are referring to, you asked about what that was, and I believe what you're referring to is the fact that a number of people, most recently Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, has referred to what the Trump administration is doing as a reality TV show. And that comes from a number of articles about the way that White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles is approaching this administration. Usually, or often at least, the chief of staff is somebody who is deeply involved in policy. and in making policy happen. Susie Wiles apparently doesn't care about policy. What she cares about is selling this administration. So if you look at, for example, the huge numbers of videos they put out and the memes they put out and the AI generated images they put out on social media channels and so on, they are spending most of their time trying to present an image. And you can see a very, very stark difference between them and the previous administration, the Biden administration, which didn't do that. They took the position that if they were doing good things for the American people, that the American people would notice and they would reward that. In that they were obviously wrong. But the difference here is that the Trump administration is not, in fact, trying to do anything for the American people. They are trying to project an image of this strong president who is doing these important things. So if you hold those three things together in your mind, the true danger of losing our democracy to an authoritarian, the fact that that idea is extremely unpopular, and the idea that this particular president is very weak, some of the ways to push back against what is happening become a lot clearer.